If you've ever handed off a design to your dev team and they implemented it completely differently than you were expecting, this episode is for you. Today, we're going to be looking at giving perfect developer handoffs to our dev counterparts. So a really common scenario that we see time and time again is we have our designers working in Figma and they go ahead and just give the developers their Figma mockups and say, good luck, hope you can make this to the best of your ability. And then delays ensue. There's a lot of back and forth, and this creates so much friction in teams. But what we want to highlight is a couple of tips and tricks to make your experience so much better. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look. So here's a really simple example of how we like to hand off flows to our developers. First off, we have everything organized underneath a header here. And what that header is trying to accomplish is just tell the developer what part of the experience that they're looking at. Beneath that, we usually include some sort of flowchart. Now, this is a relatively simple design here, but it's something that we like to do regardless, so that way they understand, okay, what pages will I be navigating between in this flow? The next thing you might notice is we have ourselves some browser URLs. And this is something that designers typically forget about, especially with web design, but they forget to design the title experience and the URL structure. So in this example here, we've designed what we want the title bars to look like, and we're also telling our developers what we want the URL structure to look like. Now this can at first involve some back and forth here, work with your developers, but as you start thinking about the experience and the page-based infrastructure that needs to happen on the web, this can become incredibly powerful for you. So over here on our index page, we don't have any URL beyond the main one. Here we've got some logic. We've got essays and we've got a slug. That is the title of our experience, or sorry, a title of our post here. And this is really important, right? There's nothing like a date in here. There's no special characters in here. There's no IDs or UUIDs. All of this is really important information that we can communicate to our developers ahead of time. And if you're going to take away one thing from this video, you start doing this, you're going to really become your developer's favorite designer overnight. The next thing that we want to take a look at is some notes over here. So typically what I try to do is say, call out any sort of implied logic that is not obvious to the developer. And here, clarity is greater than cleverness every single time here. We want to be as clear as possible around expectations, so that way the developer knows what to implement. So first off, we're saying visitors can see all available essays. And what do we mean by that? Well, if an essay is published at is null or in the future, then it shouldn't show up. So we're explaining what logic needs to apply to this experience here. And we're communicating that there's going to be some sort of publish at functionality here. That's not obvious from the designs. That's why we call it out in the text here. We're also explaining what the click target should be. So clicking on an essay's title should navigate the visitor to the essay page here. So again, not super obvious what the click target should be, and we explain that here as well. We can elaborate on this. We could start talking about the interaction effects as well, but I think this is a good start. And then we're also calling out what components we're using from our design system here. Design systems don't have to be super complicated. They can be, a couple of components and some good variables here, but we want to be communicating to our developers what we're using here, so that way they know to go look them up. Also, if you have any deviations from your components, they're using either a special state or, a special variant, we want to make sure that we're flagging that for our developers as well. Now down below here, we've got some more advanced documentation. First up, we have what we like to call access cards. What these do is they define the data access level of the current visitor. Now this is getting a little bit more advanced, but it's so powerful. If we can communicate to our developers who is accessing this page at what time with what information, they don't have to think about that when they go into development mode because the information is already there. It also means we've really considered who the target user is for the experience, as well as what the happy and non-happy path should be as they access this experience. And then last but not least, we have what we call our database card. And what we're trying to do here is, again, we're not going to define the database structure to our engineers, but we do want to call out what are the attributes of the essay and the data that live on this page here. And this can be super helpful especially as a project evolves over time. Imagine we've been working on the CMS for 5 or so years. You can imagine all the attributes that you accumulate. You've got posting schedules, you've got author relationships, you've got categories. You can really start building on these and over time have a very clear sense of what data is available to you, which makes the next design you have to do so much easier to get started. A couple of other things that we like to do that are a little bit more implicit here is have designs that reflect reality. Everything in here is using good test data. So we want to make sure that we are using as realistic information as possible. There are tons of great plugins for this, so recommend checking some of those out. But we don't have a lot of lorem ipsum in here. We're not using fake words. We're using real things that are coming from our production data here. So that way our developers are not getting confused by what is in our experience. So those are some of our favorite tips for organizing our files for really clear developer handoffs. And the biggest thing that I want to leave you here is you're not just handing off a file to your developer, you're building trust with them. When developers trust that you are going to give them all the information they need to be effective at their jobs, that is where you get incredible benefits. And they start coming to you and saying, hey, I was thinking about the experience, and what if we explored this and that option? Everything there is built on a foundation of trust, and having really, really good handoffs is one of the best ways to do that. Because when developers want to work with you, you get your work done faster, better, and with so much less back and forth. So this week, when you're working with your developers, start by understanding their needs a little bit better and ask them, what's something you wish we shared with you more often? I'd love to hear what you learned from them down in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next episode.